Bryan Fischer here for D1 Ticker and Collegiate Sports Connect. Thrilled to be joined right now by Bob Thompson of the Thompson Sports Group, a former Fox Sports executive as well. Bob, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Bryan. Happy to be here.
Well, a lot going on in the media and TV world, and I'm curious to kind of get your take, given that you sat in a lot of these discussions over the years. But when you first kind of heard about the Big Ten media rights and how they were going to be split up, especially getting the packages involved, I'm curious to just kind of get your initial take.
Well, I think seriously, the conference did a great job. I mean, to split the package and generate the dollars that they did and split the package in the way they did was, truly amazing. There's no other collegiate package that has 3 broadcast networks attached to it. And there's really no package other than the NFL that has 3 broadcast networks attached to it. So from that standpoint, it was amazing. The dollars are amazing. I think in the era of cord cutting and streaming, this is the anti-cord cutter, anti-streamer package because, virtually everybody can get over-the-air television.
It's interesting. I know that you've done a lot of these deals. They have not been announced, nothing formally. Certainly, we've had a lot of media reports about them and some of the figures thrown around. I'm just curious from your perspective, when you're sitting down with lawyers and you're looking at these deals, what are kind of the last things to kind of get completed that maybe the Big Ten and their media partners are still working on, burning that midnight oil with some of those lawyers?
Yeah, my guess would probably be just, kind of crossing the T's and dotting the I's. There may be a streaming element shoes still to drop. Wouldn't surprise me. It could be part of the NBC package for Peacock because, lately, at least the last few years, NBC hasn't done any type of a rights deal that didn't include something for Peacock. Whether there's a Apple TV Plus or Amazon Prime part, I've heard reports, but nothing that I know of for sure. So my guess is they're just trying to finalize the deals. There's a lot of documents. You got a lot of moving parts, a lot of interrelated parts because you've got so many parties in one single rights agreement. They're separate, but they're co-joined. So everything has to, cross-reference and make sure that in one deal you sign, you don't somehow, void it, or get sideways with one of the others.
Well, billable hours always a constant here in college athletics. I'm curious if you would kind of couch the Big 12 and the Pac-12, which is currently still negotiating with ESPN and Fox, as some big winners from this, given that ESPN is not still having a Big Ten relationship.
I think yesterday was probably a pretty good day for everybody at the conference, both the Big 12 and the Pac-12. Pac-12 is, as they say, on the clock. They've started the process for their deal. I expect it's going to take a little bit of time, but I think that the fact that ESPN is looking for some windows to, maintain what they've had with the Pac-12 and then also replace what they lost with the Big Ten, I can see them having an interest. I think there'll be some interest from others as well. I certainly think the conference is in a spot where they have the ability to hopefully monetize the Pac-12 networks to a little better extent than they have in the past 12 years. As far as the Big 12, I think, they're probably a year behind unless they decide to move up their window and start negotiating now. But it's a similar situation. I think there's going to be a number of bidders. I expect Fox to probably be interested in Big 12, and I expect certainly ESPN and maybe some others. So I think, with the new schools coming in, it's still a very vibrant conference. A lot of people have asked me who's in a better spot right now. I think if you look at the numbers, the viewers, things like that, TV households, they're not hugely far off. I think they both have their advantages. The Pac-12 with the late window availability. Even the Big 12 has a late window availability now that BYU is involved. So I think it's going to be, it's going to be good for both. They're going to have to be creative. Probably have some sort of a streaming element involved. But they got to be realistic. And that is, they're not going to get what the Big Ten and the SEC are getting. It's just not going to happen. Their best case is get as much as they can, hope for a big payday when the CFP playoffs are renegotiated in a few years.
With the Pac-12 in particular, I mean, is that still an attractive enough property to where a CBS could get involved to kind of pair with their current Big Ten package that they're going to get? Is it something that even Fox could get back into, maybe with a more limited package than what they have now, to have some of those later windows and fill them out?
I think Fox certainly would be interested possibly in a package that's not quite so heavy. They have half of it now, probably something less than that, and it might be more FS1 centric than Fox Broadcasting centric. I'm not sure about CBS and whether that works for them because of the golf package they have on the afternoons, late afternoons, or on Saturday afternoons. They can fit one game in there, but it's always been tough for them to do a whole lot more because of the golf. So, I think there's definitely going to be other bidders. Fox is still going to be interested. Yeah, they've got USC and UCLA that are West Coast schools, and they'll probably get a couple of games a year out of there in the 7:30 Pacific window. Is it going to be USC against Michigan? No, but it could be USC against Purdue or USC against Maryland or something like that.
Well, that USC Michigan game, that's obviously going to be probably one of the top picks and go on big noon. Fox has done a terrific job in terms of building not only that brand up, but building that time slot up for college football. How can they also kind of unlock that time slot a little bit further with this deal, getting more number one picks and really enhance value throughout the package? You mentioned FS1, which we assume is going to be a big part of this as well. How can they make sure this makes financial dollars and cents with this Big Ten noon deal?
Well, I think with the Big Ten noon, they didn't always have the first pick, I believe, in the last go round. Well, now they do. So they can make it, at least that's my expectation, that they have the first pick every week based on the dollars I'm hearing they paid. So I think that they got to just keep doing what they've been doing, growing that program. The noon time slot didn't used to be a big slot, ESPN used to lead in with kind of the number 3 or 4 Big Ten game. Well, after Fox got in there and decided, to really ramp up their pregame show and use it as a lead-in, that time slot has become significantly stronger. And then, of course, the idea is try and keep the viewer with you the rest of the day, either through another game on FBC later in the day or games on FS1, either that afternoon or that night.
Your background is in the RSN business, and I'm curious, when you look at the addition of USC and UCLA, how impactful can that be for BTN and what it can do, not only in terms of the subscriber numbers, but certainly the end market rate?
Well, that's I'm sure one of the goals of having those schools in there is certainly from Fox's standpoint, now that they own 60%, and that is to go into that market, which, heretofore those Big Ten subs, if there are any carrying it or any outlets carrying it in the Southern California area, it was on some sort of a digital sports tier, and they limited distribution, and the fee that the cable operator or satellite guys pay for those subs is significantly less. So the ability to flip those from what are considered out of market subs to subs who will be paying the same rate that the folks in Chicago and Wisconsin and all the other Big Ten states will be paying. It should be a pretty good boon for the Big Ten network and Fox, which owns 60%, and the conference, which owns 40%. So that's certainly one of the plays from Fox's standpoint, and certainly the conferences as well, because they get 40 cents of every one of those dollars.
Now that the Big Ten has kind of moved past this, I know everybody's kind of focused on what happens with Notre Dame in particular. What is when they go back to the media rights market? And I know their deal's not up for right now, but is it possible they could maybe leverage this into coming to the table a little bit earlier? Really, how is their position changed with NBC and within the market?
I think from Notre Dame's standpoint, they'll get a good check. I mean, they're probably slightly underpaid. I figured that by the end of their deal, they'll be getting around $25 million a year. And then they get 12 or 13, I think, by the end of, at the same time in 2026, I think it is, from the ACC deal. So, NBC is going to have to step up quite a bit, but I think they'll do it. And in the past, you got to remember, Notre Dame's always taken a little less money than a lot of schools might get on a per school basis because it's the cost of their independence, and they like to be independent. And so from that standpoint, they might take a little less. I think that for both NBC and Notre Dame, having a consistent package of games for NBC to promote into and out of for each other is fantastic. In the past, the Notre Dame games, 6, 7, whatever home games, they're kind of floating around out there. There's no consistency as to the week or the time. So having a package that they can promote, their Notre Dame games in, and then also promote the Big Ten games in the Notre Dame games is going to be beneficial, I think, to both of the packages.
A lot of chatter about who's not involved in the Big Ten with ESPN kind of walking away from the table. We just had Disney earnings, and Bob Chapek, whenever he's asked about sports rights, he continually says shareholder value. I'm curious, when you look at the calculus for ESPN, what was it that kind of allowed them to say, we have to walk away at the table from this package?
Well, I think they we're being asked to pay, about twice as much money for half as many games, if I'm doing the math right. And then I think also it could have been that they were offered a package that they couldn't fulfill the obligations because of what they have with the SEC. So, it could have been a variety of things. I think just at a certain point, and everybody's been at that point, Fox has been there, everybody been there, myself personally many times, and you hate to do it, but it gets to a point where you just can't make sense out of it. And so you kind of pack up and say, okay, great, next, and that's probably what the guys at ESPN are doing right now.
Well, the bulk of the value for a lot of these deals is obviously tied up in football. That's where all the attention kind of goes. But I think you ask around, a lot of folks are also wondering a little bit about basketball and how this might shake out. And I'm curious how you would approach this, knowing there are multiple media partners involved. You mentioned the streaming component earlier. Is that where a bulk of these Big Ten basketball games could end up going? Is to a streaming partner?
I don't think the bulk. I think CBS will have a package. Fox/FS1 will have a package. It'll be NBC might have a package for Peacock. Maybe, NBC hasn't had basketball since Al McGuire was around. So it's been a few years, but Big Ten Network might pick up some extra. There could be a streaming package. Don't totally rule some sort of a sub-license deal to ESPN for basketball only. I've been asking that question around, and nobody said, that's a dumb idea. So, maybe somebody else is thinking the same thing if I thought of it. So I do believe that they'll get the clearance. I think it's, the coaches, I know, having been in this situation with coaches who got thrown off ESPN onto one of our services, they aren't real happy. They like to be on ESPN, especially basketball coaches. People find the football games, but the basketball games are a little different animals. So I think that the conference will and the existing partners will figure out a way to get those basketball games out to as many homes as possible.
I mean, we have seen sub-licensing deals, with Big Ten basketball in the past. I'm curious how you would kind of approach a deal like that. If you are ESPN, would you ask for, certain concessions in order to get things, or would it just kind of be the case of whatever kind of Fox throws their way?
No, I mean, it would be a negotiation, and a lot of the value of the rights deals is placed on the football, probably 80% in that range. So I think certainly both parties would do something to reach an agreement that's equitable for both sides. It's, a lot of it, there's a lot of tonnage. That's the thing. And it's a lot of games. But ESPN needs a lot of games, not quite as much as they used to because they've got NHL and NBA now, but still it's extremely important for ESPN2 and ESPNU to have a strong package of collegiate basketball. And that's kind of, tough if you don't have something out of the Big Ten.
It's also an interesting time. In addition to all these legacy media partners that are bidding for rights like this, we've seen Amazon and Apple TV get pretty involved in a lot of these discussions. But maybe they have not gotten that real big fish outside of maybe the Thursday night package for the NFL. Is it still early in kind of the college space to say, what, we're going to fully move to a stream, or is that something that maybe even the Pac-12 could explore a little bit more as we kind of get into the thick of things and Amazon and Apple TV lose out on some of these rights?
I think they're both very active bidders. And, got some friends working there, and they're like, we bid on everything. We just can't win anything. And, they got the NFL. That's great for Amazon. And Apple had a good score with the MLS. I don't see any conferences doing a huge package and moving, a bulk of their rights onto one of the streamers at this point. They're just not quite ready for that. But I do believe that everybody, and a lot of the conferences have a package right now with ESPN Plus, but I think someone's going to jump into bed with Amazon Prime, and that they're going to be able to, show their wares to the collegiate community and how they can handle things. I don't know about Apple so much. I think there's some things that they could do outside of games that might be interesting, throwing around the ideas of like a red zone channel for the Big 10 or Pac-12, something along those lines. Alternate feeds like Manning Cast, had on ESPN. So there's a bunch of stuff that the streaming guys can do that is more difficult for networks, and that's where they can differentiate themselves, I think, from some of the others. I don't believe that anyone's going to carve out a big package at this point, because the conferences still put a premium on exposure at this point.
Is a lot of this round of negotiations still kind of, it's obviously linear focus, but we are starting to see some of those digital players become more and more of a focus. You mentioned Peacock earlier, ESPN Plus, but those services are still losing quite a bit of money. When is that inflection point going to happen in your mind, to where not only are they going to start turning profits on some of these streaming services, but really they become the primary endpoint for a lot of these deals?
I think there's a tipping point when the number of subscribers on the streaming services exceeds the number of the basic cable subscribers, or in the case of ESPN, 75 million homes. Then you really got to start looking at how much do you put on the digital side and how much do you keep on the linear network. But right now, I read Disney lost $1.1 billion in the quarter on streaming. Well, that's a whole year of Big 10 rights. So, you can buy an awful lot for that. So I think there's going to be some sort of rationalization to the business model. The prices are starting to go up, and there got to be some way to bundle a little better than they have. I know Disney's got the Disney bundle, and Warner's got the Discovery Warner bundle. But I think that there's going to have to be something a little different than what's currently being offered, because the prices continue to go up. People are going to start looking and going, okay, well, I dumped cable to go to streaming. Well, now I'm going to dump streaming because it's as expensive as the cable package was. So what do I do next? And maybe they just go back to, free over-the-air, rabbit-eared television or something they get through Roku or things like that. So there's got to be something. You can't go on losing that much money, and there's a bunch of them in that situation right now. Fox is really the only one of the broadcast networks that hasn't jumped in, feet first with the streaming model, and I think right now they're probably pretty happy they didn't.
But at the same time, is that something that might be in the cards as a result of this deal, and maybe some of the other rights that they have coming up in their portfolio?
That's possible. They can stream quite a bit of the stuff on the Fox Sports Go app. They also have the Tubi TV, which they can stream things on. So, they're pretty set. I think what they haven't done that the others have done is invested significant amounts of money on new programming initiatives. And that's what's really getting the streamers right now. It's not sports rights. It's not, it's the big dollars they're putting into entertainment product.
Well, certainly will make for some fascinating times in the next couple of years as we follow along, and will lead to more conversations like this. Bob, thank you so much for joining us and giving us some great insight.
My pleasure. You guys have a good day.